This video contains information about sexual assault. Please use good self-care while watching and/or listening to this video. Hello.
Welcome back.
So my name is Megan, and I am a court and victim advocate at the North Star Advocacy Center. So just a reminder, we are the local domestic and sexual violence shelter. We help with case management, crisis intervention. We have a 24-hour crisis hotline. We provide court advocacy, hospital advocacy, and we provide support groups, and we help people try to relocate into safer homes. And we work with people on a one-on-one basis who are either victims of domestic violence or sexual assault.
And my name is Julia Day, and in addition to being a victim advocate, I'm also the volunteer coordinator at North Star. So I oversee all interns and volunteers as they help us out at the center. So we are continuing to honor Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and we want, first off, anyone who has been assaulted to know where they can go to receive immediate medical help and to know the process.
So we have a special guest on today. So as we're just wrapping up Sexual Assault Awareness Month, we have a special guest. Her name is Natalie, and she is the forensics coordinator down in St. Joseph at MOSAIC Hospital. She also, ever since MOSAIC has also moved up here to Maryville. She has been working a lot with the advocates and our sexual assault response team up here as well. So she's now part of that. So last week we had on Lieutenant Amanda Cullen, and she shared a little bit about the sexual assault response team and her leadership in that. Well, Natalie is also a member of that. And so she's going to be sharing more on the medical side of sexual assault and what that resource looks like.
Natalie will also be talking about the sexual assault forensic exam, or a SAFE exam, and what people can expect if they need to go for that service.
And so really quick before we bring Natalie in, shout out again to our coworker, Abby Stoll. We are, since it's the last week of Sexual Assault Awareness Month, we are wearing in April, we wear teal t-shirts again because we love them and they're super comfortable. She has her own business with that, and she creates them herself, and she makes them and sends them out. So shout out again to our coworker, Abby. All right, I think with that, we'll go ahead and bring Natalie in.
Sounds good.
Hey, Natalie. So can you go ahead and just introduce yourself to the viewers and tell them who you are and what you do and how long you've been doing it?
Okay. My name's Natalie Maupin. So I am a nurse here at MOSAIC Life Care in St. Joe. I'm our forensic program coordinator, certified sexual assault nurse examiner, and I have been working as a SANE nurse since 2012, and then officially over the program since 2015.
Cool.
Natalie, as we all know, a SAFE exam, or some might know it as a rape kit, is a very intrusive exam. And even though it is super important, it can sometimes be traumatic. Sometimes when a person knows what to expect, it can be helpful. So could you just walk us through, and the viewers, what happens during a rape kit?
Yeah. So yeah, we try to make it as the least traumatic as possible. You're right, it is very hard, and so the unknown after everything they've just experienced, it can be kind of overwhelming. So when you come to the hospital, first you're just gonna be screened medically, so just making sure like there's no life-threatening big medical concerns that need addressed, and then ideally, you will have then the SANE nurse come in, so sexual assault nurse examiner, as they're trained, have more training than the general nursing medical profession in caring for patients that have been sexually assaulted. So then we'll kind of go over everything when you come in too, so you know what to expect. So going over what all is involved in the exam, such as starting out just listening to what happened. So getting the history of what happened is really important to our exam because it guides us in what we do. So we don't do the same exam for every patient. So there's a lot that we do similar, but it can be different depending on what happened. So getting that information, collecting any clothing if you had clothing that you were wearing still from the assault. And then we kind of do a head to toe exam, and that's to check for medical things, so any injuries or pain, but then also to collect evidence. So it's a combination of some swabs and some plucking of hairs that all have significance for the evidence and the DNA purposes. So the big thing we like to preface is it's not an all or nothing. So while we kind of try to give all that information so you're not like surprised at the beginning, then as we're going through each part, then we'll kind of explain it again. Okay, here's what this part is for. Are you okay with me going ahead and doing this? But at any point, if a patient's like, I just can't handle that part, that's perfectly fine. And we can still continue on and do other parts of the exam. So some of those things could be like plucking hairs. So we do have to pull head hairs, but knowing the why behind it. So that's to try to get the patient's DNA to show that this is who we collected this exam from. And so like DNA is found in the root of the hair. So that's why we have to pull the hair. We're not allowed to cut it. But that can be helpful if, say, later on they find, they go to the crime scene, like law enforcement, and they find different hairs, then they're able to compare it with the hairs we collected to say, yes, that was that patient's, or no, hey, that potentially was the suspect's. So I think just trying to explain as we're going the why behind it, or else it would just sound absolutely crazy to say, hey, I'm going to pluck some hairs from your head. So there is a method to why we have to do things. And then we can help just explain it too. If there's like, maybe there's an area the patient's like, like how significant do you think this would be for my case? And then we can talk that through. We do like oral swabs. That's another way to verify DNA, but then also can be significant if the patient was orally assaulted. Then we're trying to also collect potential evidence from that suspect. And then we just kind of move down the body. So if there's any place that when that patient told us something happened, so say they said they were licked or kissed or bit in a certain area, those are all potential places that evidence can be found. And so we're going to swab those. So it's literally just swabs that look kind of like Q-tips you would get over the counter, but just longer. And so we do that. And then again, just kind of keep working down the body. We try to leave the genital area for last, as we know that that's just the most invasive and private, and probably the area that's going to just be the most difficult because of what happened. And so then part of that is making sure, do we see any injury before we do any swabs? If the patient allows it, we take photos. Photos can be a really big part of evidence, just to showing what we're seeing, because this exam is so private and so invasive, but it also documents a lot of that injury. So we do that. Here we store those photos completely separate from the regular medical chart, because we know they're very private. And so even though, yes, everything is confidential, we try to have that most security for these. So that's going to be in a separate file, as well as our forensic chart where we document all of this. And then we will do a speculum exam. So similar to if you went and got like a pelvic exam, but obviously it's a little different because of the trauma that happened. We have some limitations with lubrication we can use and stuff like that, just because of its impact on evidence. So we try to do everything we can to make it easier, but we understand it's difficult. But that's a big part of the evidence, is getting those vaginal swabs. And then if there's any type of rectal assault, we would do those swabs. And so anyway, it's just very much dependent on what happened and what the patient says that happened. But we try to do it as sensitive as we possibly can. And like I said, explaining why we're doing it, but realizing there's nothing wrong if you say that you don't feel comfortable with a certain part. We will just move on and get the stuff that we find, the other stuff that's important, and the stuff that the patient feels comfortable with. And that's all of the evidence piece of it. But then obviously we really care about those medical concerns too. So we want to make sure we're going over with the patient if they have any concerns with pregnancy or sexually transmitted infections. So we really want to make sure we've gone over that, and we offer preventative medications for that. Make sure we have good follow-up, because you come in, get all that stuff done, but it's going to be really important to still maintain follow-up and make sure that the patient is still safe and hasn't had any new, signs or symptoms come up afterward. So that's kind of the big overview.
Yeah. It's a huge process, an important process, but a huge process. Just so victims know, just because if you do a rape kit, just because you do one of those does not obligate that person to talk to law enforcement or do a report or anything like that. So it's still very much in the victim's control. So I think that's a misconception out there, is like when you go to the hospital, you automatically have to, this is going to be turned into law enforcement, and there's going to become this case, where that's not necessarily what each victim wants. And so I think it's important for viewers to know that just because you do a safe exam, have a safe exam completed, that you still don't have to talk to law enforcement, and you actually can do the rape kit anonymously. So Natalie, can you talk to us a little bit about the anonymous kits?
Yeah. So yeah, really good point. I think we feel like you have to hurry up and make a decision more because of the time sensitivity of evidence. So I will add that, because I hadn't added that. So we will collect evidence for up to 5 days after assault. Obviously, the sooner the better, because there's certain piece of evidence that just is lost sooner. So every kind of hour does make an impact on what evidence we could potentially collect. But that's why there feels like there's that urgency to kind of collect things quickly, and there is. But yes, it's realizing that that doesn't mean that by you collecting it that you're having to talk to law enforcement or you have to prosecute or whatever. It's really just allowing us to get that time sensitive potential evidence that would be lost if it's not collected in that timely fashion. So what we go over, is the different reporting options. So under Violence Against Women Act, patients have the right to report anonymously. So you'll kind of hear it different. Some states call it unreported, some call it anonymous. Missouri has actually recently made more reporting options. So there's a difference between unreported and anonymous, but it's really confusing. So for simplicity, let's just say you don't have to report to law enforcement to collect evidence. So it allows us, you say, I'm really not sure what direction I want to go yet, but I know that I could have this evidence lost, then we can collect it and we can store it where it won't have any of your identifiers on it. So it'll be anonymous, and it'll just have different areas do different things, but essentially just an unidentifiable number or name that's not linked to you other than what the nurse would have, but nobody else would know it, and allows us to collect it and store it for that patient to decide, okay, what are my next steps? Like, what do I want to do? Do I want to talk to law enforcement or do I not? And I think it can be really powerful for those patients that have used it. Some, it might even just be like a week or two later, and they're like, okay, the moment I came with you and saw you, I was just like, this had just happened. There was really overwhelming a lot, and I just needed some time to kind of deal with everything and focus on myself. And then they're sometimes at a better place where they feel more comfortable to talk to law enforcement. Maybe it's not then, maybe it's, years later. It's really up to you. And like I said, the state is advancing on kind of changing some of those options to look at, well, can you do more than just collect it like unreported without your information, but even submit it anonymously. So there are laws on that, and that's something that the state's kind of helping do rules and regulations and helping different jurisdictions get up to date on that to make sure we collected the best that we can. But in general, just knowing that you don't have to report to law enforcement, we can talk that with you and give you those options to later decide if you want to.
And even if victims don't want to report to law enforcement right away, that's okay too. So can you talk to us about how long these kits are held on to?
Yeah, so that's kind of a thing that's being kind of looked at a lot in the state right now about what it's going to be. So in general, it's at least up to 5 years, or potentially going to be longer. So they're looking at, statute of limitations for sex crimes. Kind of in general, there's no statute of limitations. And so looking at, well, should we be able to collect those longer? So it's not by people not wanting to. A lot of it is like kind of a storage issue of like, okay, where can we store these kits and for a great enough time? So that's kind of what this data is looking at, to try to even extend it to where they will keep them for longer. But in general, they're up to 5 years. Like you said, some areas are saying yes, definitely. Some are kind of putting a little caps on it. But the big thing is that if you decide that option, you'll be informed about what that is. And then just in the spirit of honesty, sometimes we might not know for sure if it's going to be able to be past that 5 years, for sure that 5 years, but if it's past that. And so that would be something with your work with the nurse and like with the advocates, how we're able to like keep in touch. And if there's any changes of, okay, we're about at that point that you got to hit that 5-year mark, and if they're going to have to destroy that, if there's that communication back to that patient and stuff like that. So it's kind of a fluid thing. So I don't mean to like give kind of a vague, but it's just a big topic right now that they're trying to make sure that they do the best by the victim, but also within the resources and the storage capabilities they have. I don't know if that helps. Sorry, I know that's kind of a long thing, but.
So one of the things that I think is so cool, just having worked with you the past, I don't know, would you say couple years, year? I don't know.
I don't know.
But you
together in a good way, but I don't know.
Yeah. You have done tremendous work down there in St. Joe in the ER. One of the things that you have done is created a space just for sexual assault forensic exams to be completed. Can you talk about that?
So yeah, we are super fortunate to have this space. This has been something since I started my work as a SANE nurse and just like learning from other programs and then like learning from survivors of different places, kind of what helped them and what was like trauma informed and just therapeutic for them. And one thing that stood out is there were some places that had like designated rooms, and they talked about how they weren't so sterile like the hospital rooms, and they had like either a comfy chair or couch or just was like more private and therapeutic. And so that's always been kind of like, once I heard that, something we really wanted to work on here. But space is a hot commodity, and the hospital, especially as we're growing. And so it was kind of something we had to work a little bit and getting funding, but we were really blessed that we were able to find a space still within the emergency room. And we had we had it donated by like our auxiliary that has really taken this on, and they really want to support this cause. And so we were able to get this room, and a big thing is it has a bathroom with a shower. That's like a huge thing for us, is we never had that before. And so just how it might seem like so minimal, but just how much being able to shower is a really big thing for victims. You know, if they've come straight from the assault and then we've done this exam, which we talked about, that is, you know, pretty intrusive, then to just be able to go in and shower and kind of, I mean, it doesn't take everything away, but kind of have like a fresh start before they're going back to their home or wherever it may be. It's a little more, like I said, it's still within the ER, but it's removed a little bit. We know ERs are just crazy as much as we try to make them not crazy and, you know, honor confidentiality and all that. It's just crazy loud. There's lots of monitors and people in and out. So I think sometimes it can feel like, oh man, everybody can still knows what's going on or all that. So this just allows us to take them back to an even more private area. And then we have like our, you know, our medical bed and stuff that we need there too, but we were able to try to make it more comforting. So have some decorations and some just like more therapeutic colors on the wall, and like I said, just a more private therapeutic space. And so our goal is just like, we know it's just one little thing, but every little bit counts and helps. And so just to kind of show that, hey, we care about you and we want to take you in this space that helps to give you that, like I said, just as much privacy and kind of like help on that road to healing as we possibly can. And so anyway, that's kind of the goal. So
That's awesome. Our one final question is, we've been asking our guest speakers on our show, what is an activity they recommend during quarantine or during the stay-at-home order? So do you want to share something that you've been doing or give a suggestion?
like just a normal, like nothing, just grief. Well, I've got two little ones, a 1 and a 3-year-old, so we've been spending a lot of time outside. So getting fresh air, and I know it's a little different when you have kids because you just got to entertain them a lot, but we've been doing that, and we've been doing chalk obstacle courses to try to like get a little activity going, which mommy can use here because I'm sure maybe other people are better, but I've been eating a lot because what else do you have to do? So anyway, that's what we've been doing. We're not that exciting, but painting pictures. We've been sending cards. I think whether or not you have kids or adults, I think like we're all just kind of in this difficult time and funk. So if you can send something, just letting somebody know that you're thinking of them and brighten their day. We did that for Easter. We sent all of our family some painted pictures and just to try to brighten their day. Okay. And then I'm going off script. Can I share something? One thing we just want to assure, I don't know, I know it's kind of a hot topic with like COVID and everything on how it's impacting people, and just especially in the like SANE forensic world, we've been like talking across the states in the US, like and obviously some areas are impacted more than others, but just like reassuring people that we are here and to see patients. We have our room that we talked so lovely about has kind of been used right now for part of our process for COVID, just because of its location and being able to have a bathroom, so that we're trying to be as careful of spread of things and stuff right now. So we're not able to use that space just for temporary. It is not going to be long. It'll be back to us. And once it is, it'll be sterilized and clean and all that great stuff. But just know that we're still very much seeing all patients. And even though we don't have the room, there's other, ways we can still try to find a private space. It's just modified a little bit. And that we don't want people to worry about that. We're making a lot of precautions, but please, if you have stuff going on, especially during this time, not to be afraid to come in, and just know that we're still operating like usual. We still have experts available, and we want to make sure that, patients get the best care, and might look a little different, but just know it's still there. So.
Well, Natalie, thank you so much for being on our show and talking about this, this stuff. And you are just right there on the front lines of it all, just not only with the sexual assaults, but just, nursing and being in the ER in general. So really, thank you so much for what you're doing. And I'm sure it's been extremely hectic, for the past, couple months and everything. But your efforts of what you do in the sexual assault world make our job as advocates so much easier, and that room, like you mentioned earlier, it seems like almost like a small thing, but it's just so huge, like when you've just been through trauma. And to be able to have like the private room, and then to be able to just go right into, the shower. And I know that down there in St. Joe, you guys have like different clothes and stuff that they can have, because sometimes they have to leave their clothes behind as evidence. So that stuff is just so huge. And so we just appreciate all of your compassion and your dedication. And it really is just such a privilege and joy to work with you.
Thank you. You guys too, we're a team, and I think that's like a big part, is just realizing that all of us care a lot, and that we want to collaborate and try to, like I said, we know it's a hard process, but try to make you leave feeling better than what they came in. And so we love our advocates, and we couldn't do without you guys. So thank you also.
All right. Well, thank you, Natalie. That's about all we have time for today. So
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. See ya.
Bye. Well, that was good. Like we talked about, that room is so awesome. And I don't know if you've got to see it with the pictures. I know you haven't got to go down there, but like see it with the pictures and everything. I was just blown away by it all. And they even have like their own little nurses station off to the side of that room, which I'm really excited about that too. Because just, like she said, the ER is just so busy. And so I really like that right now. We, in addition to some of the services that I mentioned earlier, our organization provides hospital advocacy. When we're not going through COVID-19, we would provide advocacy. By what that means in the hospital is if someone is sexually assaulted, that victim is asked if they would like an advocate present. So in the event that I'm called to the hospital because the victim wants an advocate, I go out there and I provide emotional support to them. So that process that Natalie was talking about is pretty lengthy, and it's tiresome. It's a very important process, but it's tiresome. It's really challenging, and so sometimes it helps to just have another person there to be able to explain the process, to be able to share your emotions with you, and to just kind of, sometimes I'm physically holding somebody's hand during the harder parts of that exam. So that's what hospital advocacy looks like, not in while we're going through a pandemic, not in quarantine. So right now, unfortunately, we are not, advocates and volunteers are not able to be in the room, but we're available by phone, and we definitely would be there in spirit, like as I said, like when we're on the phone with a person. So and that's just to keep everybody safe health wise. So it's just an unfortunate thing, but that's we would still make every effort, and we would be doing all the advocacy over the phone.
So in this episode, we talked a lot about the St. Joe, Missouri MOSAIC Hospital and their SAFE exam. And I know some of you might be thinking, okay, what about Maryville? Well, right now, Maryville actually doesn't have the capability to have this exam done at the MOSAIC Hospital here in Maryville. So for the time being, these kits are still happening, and advocates here at North Star, we will still be there or over the phone because of Corona right now. And law enforcement, everyone is still involved, but the actual kit will have to take place at MOSAIC in St. Joe. And so that's why we brought on Natalie from St. Joe, and as she walked us through their program and through their new room and everything. And it is because these exams have to take place in St. Joe, because Maryville does not have that right now.
Mm-hmm. So we just appreciate her coming on the show, and she covered a lot of good stuff. It's just, important. It's an important process. One of the things that we should probably mention to get to get best results out of a SAFE exam is to not take a shower before you do one of those, to not eat or drink anything, to not use the bathroom. And those are really icky things to have to say to somebody, especially if they've been sexually assaulted. But that's best collection of evidence that way. And now if you do, because like she said, they'll take it up to 5 days. So, if you do, obviously don't think that, oh, I took a shower, so I can't go in. So you definitely still can. Just best practice when you're going in there is to not do those things, unfortunately. So that's what makes having a shower there and having clothes there and everything so vital to that room, is because those are things that you're encouraged not to do before the exam, and then you can be able to do those things right after, since that service is available.
Mm-hmm. I think something else too, just with the SAFE exam, is that sometimes there might be a pressure on the person who has been assaulted or others in that situation to think that this exam is going to stop a perpetrator, this exam is going to stop this happening again. And that is a weight that most definitely the survivor of a sexual assault should never carry, that their exam is going to stop that. Because, and Megan and I will probably talk about this in another episode, but just with the legal side of things, like it is a very fine and narrow road to go on with this exam and everything. And the person who has been assaulted should never have to carry the weight that they're going to stop this from happening again. This exam is something that someone can take for themselves. It will, if they do want to go to court and all of that, like it will be used, but this is something that it is their choice to do. And it is never anyone's responsibility to go through with this exam for the sole purpose to stop this from happening again.
So we didn't mention earlier, Julia, what are you drinking today?
Today, I'm drinking from my Harry Potter mug. I am a Huffle Proud. It says, "I solemnly swear that I'm up to no good." It's from just Harry Potter. But I am drinking water, actually. H2O. What are you drinking, Megan?
I'm drinking grape juice this morning, and I'm actually not drinking out of a mug. This was kind of I forgot to prepare a drink before the show until the very last minute. I'm like, oh no, I have to go grab a mug. And then of course I couldn't decide. But then I saw this cup, and this is actually from our Missouri Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence, so that has their information on it. And I have 3 of these, but I use the one in teal because teal is sexual assault awareness colors. And then it says United Missourians to End Rape and Abuse. So thought that was fitting for our last day of Sexual Assault Awareness Month.
Yeah, awesome.
Oh, yeah. So grape juice all the way.
Oh, good. I love grape juice.
All righty. Well, Julia, I hope you have a good day.
You too, Megan.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Shout out to all MOSAICs in our 5-county area. That includes Grant City, Albany, Stanberry, and Maryville. Today's resource came from Natalie Maupin from MOSAIC St. Joe, where the sexual assault forensic exams are currently taking place for the Northwest area.
And as always, follow us on our Facebook page at North Star Advocacy Center. You can follow us on Twitter at @NorthStar_AC, or because we're quarantined, you can go watch our videos on our YouTube page. Just type in North Star Advocacy Center.